Hi everyone, thank you for joining me today. My name is Sarah Herzl and I'm looking forward to being creative with you today. Today we're going to be experimenting with watercolor pencils and black ink. It's a fun, versatile combination. Our design will be a botanical design. You can choose anything that you want as far as your inspiration, and the watercolors will be adding a splash of color. I will take you step by step so you can just follow along. Let's get started. Okay, today this is our watercolor pencil and black ink design. So this is a finished piece, an example of a finished piece where we have our botanical inspired bumblebee with some design around it, and then I have taken the watercolor pencils and added a wash in the background. So we're leaving the bee itself without any color behind it. It's your choice if you wanted to add color to it. But this is our final piece. Now, what the inspiration is I found this wonderful line drawing of a bumblebee, and I thought it would make a really, really nice design. You have other options. I also found this one that we're not going to do today, but I found this amazing beetle that you can also use as your design. So this is our finished piece. Where we're going to start with is over here, and we're going to start with just a blank piece of watercolor paper. It is taped down to a board in this case, so that when we add water to it, and it's going to buckle a little bit with the application of the water, so I want to kind of keep it in place. Our first step is I resized my bumblebee, and then I'm putting transfer paper on the back of it. This is the easiest and best way to get a design that is very specific onto to another piece of paper, to the watercolor paper. So I added a little design to mine. So I'm using the same paper, and I'm laying it just, the shiny side goes down towards the paper that you're using, and this is my design, and I'm just going to lay it right on top. I'm going to take a little bit of tape and make sure it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't need much, just a little bit. And I am simply going to trace over my entire design. So I'm going to start with my bee because it's my most important. And I don't have to press hard. I'm just making a tracing. And then I go over the whole thing, everything I want. If I change my mind about some aspect of this design, I just simply draw it differently. But this is a nice way to keep the image that I've been inspired by. Even if you draw this yourself, you can certainly draw your own botanical inspired drawing of nature, and but do the same thing. Just because it gets you nice clean lines in a short amount of time. And it's going to transfer a graphite drawing onto your paper. You can certainly, like I said, you can sketch if you want to. With this particular case, I don't want a lot of sketch marks, so because I'm going to be using a lot of line work as opposed to anything else that's more interpretive. So I'm just going over everything I have here, and I can change my mind on something, or I can also wait and add the details once I pull this up. It helps me with placement and composition. And I'll show you what I mean when I'm just sketching these in just like this so I know where they are. And then when I pull this up, I can finish my drawing. Just add a few more elements here for interest. You certainly don't have to. You can go simply with your main subject. And what you can do every now and then is you can lift it up and see what you have and if you've forgotten something. But right now I'm just going to show you what I have. I have my graphite drawing, and off to the side you can see I now can go in and add all those details that I had on my little extra branches all over this way. I can go now and add them because I know where they go. And so you can certainly go add all that in there. just like that. And branches and details. You can also wait and do that with your pen. So those are just some options, because you can take a lot of time getting the pencil drawing just exactly how you want it. And then you're just going to go over it again with your ink. So you can save time by just having the indication. And you can see here that I'm missed a couple of places, so I'm just going to go and add them to my B, because my B is my most important thing. So that is the transfer, the easy transfer with transfer paper. Here is a finished one with a little more details. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to be using, I'm just using a regular pen, a black pen. You can use an artist pen, you can use a fine, extra fine point Sharpie, or anything that's going to give you a consistent line. Is certainly up to you. You can, like I said, you can use a Sharpie or a permanent marker. You can use an ink pen. You can use an artist pen. And then we're going to outline our B in the black ink. Then it will be all ready for us to go to our watercolor pencils. So watercolor pencils, as an example, these are our watercolor pencils, and then we are going to be using brushes, and we'll have our water, and we'll have our paper towel next to us. And then I'll be showing you some techniques on using the watercolor pencils in getting kind of more, it look more like watercolor than line work. So let's get started. And I start with the main subject matter, because I don't know about you, but sometimes I get tired, and I might go faster on the end part than I really should. So I want to make sure my main subject has all of my attention. And we go simply around. Now, if you wanted to take the option of having a variation in your line width, you can do that as well. You will just either use another pen option. You can have something that is more of a brush tip as well, so you can do your thicks and thins. In this case, I'm going to be pretty straightforward. And then I'll show you where I might do a little more thick and thin. Right now, I'm just getting it nice and outlined in my main subject. We're also going to take a moment to then erase as much of the pencil or the graphite that we can, so that when we go over with our watercolor pencil with the water, that we don't have it popping up and noticing it. So here we go. These funny little bee legs. I happen to really like bees and the whole shape of them. If you look really closely, you know, they're they're all sorts of different types of bees. So you pick what you like, or you can go with what I had is an alternative would be like a beetle or a dragonfly or a butterfly, or even if you wanted to go the route of a floral. This is also a really nice technique for highlighting a wildflower or a floral drawing. Going in here, I didn't draw it on there with my pencil because I wanted to do it with my pen. Like I said, you can get really nice, expensive, or kind of fine sets of artist pens, and they work wonders. So if you prefer that, of course, you can absolutely do that. Now I have my basic B outline, and I'm going to go in on the outside of the wings. Just make it a little thicker, so it helps kind of separate it. You don't have to do this, but I like the way it looks. This is just a fine point. You can also use the extra fine. It's even tinier. I think I'm just going to do the outside and leave the inside fine. Just like this. All right, so there's my main image, and then you can certainly go in and do all of the extra branches and little flowers, little seeds, any way that you want. Add more details to what I didn't do details in the drawing part. We're going to paint right on top of this because it is not our main focus, but the little extra detail adds interest in our design composition. You can be very structured, or you can leave it open-ended. I just like to have a little bit of variety there. Add some detail lines. The beetle that I have over here has a lot of details. So this part can take a bit of time if you're doing something that has a lot of line work. So just keep that in mind when you're picking your design. It's well worth it though. In true botanical drawing style, it has a tremendous amount of intricate detail. I'm taking a few liberties here, not as much detail for our bee. Do some repetition of large and small. Can do some of my small little circles here that I have down at the bottom just from a design balance consideration. Just a little bit more on this one. All right. Now if you want to add any more detail to the ink stage, do it now because you won't be able to do it once you start painting. So all your fine tuning of your design in your black ink is now. Everything inside our bee is not going to have watercolor on it, at least in my design. So you can choose to do your bee or your whatever subject matter you choose to be a color. So I'm going to take my eraser and go over my entire design, because I want to get the pencil marks off, the graphite marks off as much as I can. Now with the watercolor paper, they tend to be a little stubborn because they get into the paper fibers more than just regular paper. So, but we will not worry about that. Just clean it off. Okay, and then this is your last look to see if there's something that you left off or you want to add. All right. So at this point, we're going to talk about watercolor pencils. And I've got not a full, like not an actual set that's, I just pulled out my favorite colors of a couple of sets. And I tend to do that, where you can see I have all of these colored pencils to choose from. I have my paintbrush assortment here. I've got a little bit of water, and I've got some other paper towel on the ready if I need to. You can see these two pieces right over here. I don't need my eraser anymore. So I want to show a couple of different techniques, and I will just go on here to show you. So when you're working with watercolor pencils, you can just do it with a simple circle that I've drawn. You can certainly take your pencil, your watercolor pencil, and use it just like a regular pencil, a colored pencil. You can go and add it as from a firm standpoint. You can press firmly, just like you would with a pencil. You're drawing with it. So that's a firm one. And then you go, when you're ready, the water is going to activate the pigment in there. So you're not really then painting on top of it, you're just activating it. So when you go in and you dot the water on it, then that's where you get your watercolor effect. You notice I didn't cover the whole thing because I can have lighter areas. Now, that's how you activate the color. Now I'm going to do another one just right next to it, same color, but I'm just going to go very light. So if you go very light, just a little bit, and you use a lot of water, you will see that it's going to be a lot lighter and a lot wetter. Still an effect that you might want in an area. So you can just see the difference between the two. So the other thing that you can do is you can do a gradient from this side to this side. We'll do a little box here, and we'll go from pink to purple. So I'm going to go pink here, just making my shape right in here. And then I'm going to put purple on the other side. I don't have to fill the whole box. So then I'm going to go in with my paintbrush, and I'm going to activate the pink side, just like I did originally, just like that. I'm going to rinse my brush. I'm going to activate the purple side, just like that. Then I rinse my brush, and I blend the two together. The reason why I'm cleaning my brush in between is just kind of, you just want to make sure that you're working with clean water when you're doing the gradient, so it doesn't get muddy too quickly. And so that's how that works. Now I'm going to show you one more thing, because this is what I'm primarily going to use today, except for some tiny little detailed areas, is I'm going to take one of my colored pencils, my watercolor pencils. I'm going to take it, let me show you here so I don't drip on my example, and I'm going to take the brush that's full of water, and I'm going to actually rub my watercolor pencil all over my paintbrush. And then when I go back in, I'm actually just painting with that pigment, just like that. So you can use it that way where you're not working with a line, and you're just working with the pigment. That's one of my favorite ways to work. Another thing I'll show you before we get to our final piece, I'm going to use my larger brush. And you can just put water down in a larger area, just like this, putting water down. And then I'm going to use my paintbrush that I just had, and I'm applying that same pigment on there, and then I can drop it in to an area that has just that's already wet. And then you can do that with multiple colors in the same area. Go ahead and wet your you're just transferring the pigment to your paintbrush, and you can drop it in. So just a couple of different ways to get a more fluid result in an area. And then if you have too much water in an area, you can take your paintbrush and get it dry, or dry as possible, and you can just have it soak it up. You can go in and kind of clean up some of that, just like you do with watercolor. All right, so those are a few ways to work. I'm going to use a combination of those with our piece right here, and I'll just get us started. So I'm going to be using more in this area where we have the blues and the purples. One of my favorite colors is this teal color. And then on these close to, I'm just using it like a colored pencil. In these areas where I need to get right in there, close to my bee design, I'm going to go in all around it so to make sure I get nice color in there. Now you see I have a pretty rough tooth on this paper, so that's both good because it's going to grab the watercolor pencil and the water, but it also can take a little bit more to cover it. So I'll show you what I mean here in just a second. So I'm just taking large areas and adding that teal color, which was right here, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to add another color blue right next to it. And I'm just moving around in different directions so that I don't get too linear. And I'm wanting it to just look like a nice flow of different colors. This doesn't have to take that long because we're not in the detail area. And then you can just switch that up as often as you want. I tend to stay, when I do this, I tend to stay in either cool colors or warm colors because I don't want too much contrast since it's going to be in the background. But I also want it to be nice and dark compared to my bee line work. So you can just add 2 or 3 colors, all pretty close together, and that ends up being a nice background. Like I said, you can press really hard, or you can go really light to cover the area, just really light where it's not going to be as dark. But as I mentioned, I'm moving the direction of my marks in different directions because I don't want it to be a single line. As I get around the bee, just like that. And you just kind of choose what you like. And you can overlap colors too if you want a slightly different color variation with a couple of pencils overlapping each other. You can certainly do that. I'm not worried too much about a space between because when I add the water will fill that out. They'll bleed into each other. But I do want to make sure I'm putting enough down so that the pigment that's activated is a good dark color. If it's not, if it ends up being too light, once it dries, you can go back over it with another round of color to add that layer of darkness that you want. So sometimes you can go lighter to see if you like it, and then you can go back once it's dry. It has to be dry. You can go back and add darker areas, or darken the whole thing. Now you can see on my example, the texture of this paper is showing through. It's going to show through. If you use a smooth paper, you don't have really to deal with the texture of your paper as much. You still will need to vary the direction of your marks, just simply because that's the nature of the pencil. Just like you would with colored pencil on a colored pencil drawing. You choose a direction or a combination or hatch marks or things like that. Let's see. I am going to use a little bit of blue. I'm going to go and introduce it right up here. Right next to my line. So I try not to be too busy with too many colors, but I wanted that blue down here, so I'm adding it at the top. I'm going to add a little bit here. Just switching back and forth. Now, of course, if you need to stop and give your pencil a good sharpen, that's good. I find that I like to have, when I'm doing large areas, to not have a super sharp pencil, because I'd rather use the side of it than the point. It just covers more area. Now as I get to this top corner, I am actually going to go with a little lighter hand because I'd like to just slowly lighten in this little area. It's not as intense. You can see the difference. I may change my mind once it dries and I'll go over it with a darker layer, but it's just an option. Then I might go in and just add a little bit of yellow around my edges. Yellow will blend with these colors and probably be a green. But in this case, it's probably not a problem. All right, so I'm going to stop right there. And since I've used the dry method on this whole thing, I'm going to go and then more surgically add in my water. And then you can do the same. You can do the other all over if you want to do. You can do the other solution where you're just doing the rubbing the pigment on the paintbrush all over, or a combination. But I wanted to show you what this one looked like. That you tend to kind of end up with a lighter color to start with, and then you might have to do a couple of layers. The more water you add to this, the lighter the color is. It's not as intense or as bright. So you can use that as a strategy. If you want an area to move around a little bit more, you can add a little bit more water to it, or a little less water if you want to keep some intensity in there. Now I use my smaller paintbrush right around our little bee, because I want to make sure I stay in close to my line. And then once I move out, you can do this in segments too. Once I move out, I can use my larger brush to move things around a little bit faster. You can see I have a little bit more water to it, so it is going to be lighter. And if you happen to get like a water line because you've been working lots of different areas, I mean, this is kind of the nature of watercolor too. You can get a water line. And you can certainly use a larger brush for the detail areas, or you can go back and forth. I try to keep my brush fairly clean, so I use a lot of times I'm putting it back in to get some fresh water on it, or it just I might just need more water. All right. So hopefully you're having fun with this, experimenting, because if you've not used watercolor pencils before, which I hadn't in a long time, you just have to play around with it, see what you like. You might have a preference of one over the other. You might have a different paper that you prefer, certainly different subject matter. If you want to work one layer and then let it dry and then do another layer on top, you can do that as well. In these tiny little areas, just want to make sure I get all of those. And see if I don't rinse out my brush, I can move the two colors together, which isn't a bad thing. So you can just, if you use a bigger brush, some of the steps will go a little bit bigger. I have other brushes that you could use. I've got this one, really any ones that you want. I tend to use the ones that are made for watercolors just because the bristles are the right stiffness. Acrylic brushes are just a little bit too stiff for my taste for something like this. You can see how the different effect that a different brush has. This one has more of a stippling. right in there with that yellow so I don't lose it. And then feel free to, as you're working, just turn things upside down. You can see things differently. You can kind of see where my my application direction was going one way, and I just want to make sure that that I can move it around if I want to. See where I had that lighter area? It's just going to be a little bit. And right up there next to the little bee face. If you use a lot of water, your paper's going to buckle a lot. Your tape will keep it in place. We're almost done here. All right. So at this point, I've done all of the work that I want to do at the moment. Once it dries, it'll look a little bit different. So I may go in on certain areas and get a little bit more detail in there, or add another application of color. So I will show you this one. This is the finished one that I did earlier. If I wanted to add a little bit more, I would go in this is dry, so I'd go in and just go right on top. And then you can get some areas. You don't have to add water again if you don't want to. You can just get a nice dark color in there. Always turn your work if you want to get a better angle at where you're working. You don't have to work over your work. Just like that. You can just add more. And then if you did want to hit that with water, you probably want to have it taped down if you're going to do a lot of it. But if it's just a little area, you can just go and just put a little bit of water to activate it, just like that. If you want it to look a little bit more smooth, you can see it just adds a whole lot more pigment down. And then you can blend it with just plain water. Just bring it out a little bit. Just like that. So that way, as you're working, you can go in and add darker areas. Can't make an area lighter per se. So, alrighty. So I hope you enjoy experimenting with both a botanical look, which is really fun to, it's fun to frame and put on your walls. It's just kind of a fun combination of both line work and experimenting with these watercolor pencils. There are lots of different brands out there. Just you find the one that you like the most and experiment with it as well. So Like I said, you can find any of the drawings, public domain out there of all sorts of botanical drawings. You can certainly draw your own and go that route as well. Now, if I wanted to, on the inside of the bee, I could go with my pen again and work on some areas, just as long as I don't go outside of that area. So I hope that you have enjoyed this, and if you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks a lot.